The Supreme Court has finally ruled against affirmative action, specifically ruling that Harvard and the University of Carolina can no longer factor in race in college admissions, where the Supreme Court was split 6-3, as a majority believed that Harvard was violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin in any program that receives federal funding or financial assistance. And now, the Supreme Court and several buildings in the Capitol had to be evacuated after a suspicious package was found.
You gotta go! Gotta go! You're getting pushed off!
Now, I know a lot of you would think that I would be celebrating this decision, and although I do think it's good that we get rid of affirmative action, it's just that Ivy League college admissions flat out won't affect me whatsoever. And in case you're new to the channel, although I'm Asian, I've always been terrible at school. And even though my kids will at least be part Korean, I just don't see myself pressuring my kids to attend an institution that's going to teach them to hate themselves, their heritage, and later, their bank account. But let's just listen to what President Joe Biden thinks.
As we all know it, discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America. Discrimination still exists in America.
And hey, when he's right, he's right. Plenty of Asians face discrimination when it comes to college admissions, the entertainment industry, and something nobody seems to talk about, pro sports. Because we are horrendously underrepresented when it comes to Division I college athletics. But the solution to the problem isn't lowering the standards for Asians to join these sports programs, because yeah, it might be cool to see me, Decoy, in college football, breaking an NCAA record and torn ligaments in one single play. It still wouldn't fix the real-world application of my abilities in that field. But Biden somewhat disagrees.
Many people wrongly believe that affirmative action allows unqualified students to be admitted ahead of qualified students. This is not how college admissions work.
Although Biden can lie, the numbers don't, as Greg Price points out that African American students in the 40th percentile of their academic index are more likely to get into Harvard than an Asian in the 100th percentile. Yeah, it sucks for those hardworking Asian students getting rejected into college, but at the end of the day, it actually hurts society more than anything. The future thought leaders of this country will no longer be the best and brightest in terms of ability, but instead it'll be whoever makes the campus brochure look most like a Netflix series. And not just the future corporate and political leaders, more importantly, the future engineers and medical staff. Because look at how Stanford accepted the person that just wrote #BlackLivesMatter 100 times on their application. Meanwhile, this guy with a 35 on the ACT, over 5.0 GPA, and ranked #1 at their school got rejected to every single school.
Did I get into Harvard? No, 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 no. Dude, I must have done something seriously wrong.
No wonder even leftist grifters like Kendi have to admit that white students have to lie about their race to get into college. And just think about the consequences of these practices being in our education system for decades. When you get on a flight, were those engines designed and tested by the most educated individuals in their field, or simply the most woke? If a loved one gets diagnosed with a terminal condition, are they going to receive treatment from the most diligent experts in medicine available, or just whoever was available and graduating at the right time to fill a quota? Because Biden can cry about everyone being a qualified individual all he wants.
You know, I know today's court decision is a severe disappointment to so many people, including me.
The simple fact that they rank color over performance completely dissolves the value of the word qualified. Now, the one thing that surprised me is this old footage of Trump being in favor of affirmative action.
Affirmative action. Should we keep it? Yes or no?
I'm fine with affirmative action. I mean,
should it be expanded, or should it be limited?
Well, it should be, you have to also go free market, you have to go capability, you have to do a lot of things, but I'm fine with affirmative action.
Now, it does seem as of today, he is celebrating the Supreme Court decision against affirmative action, as he posted on social media that he believes it will help the US stay competitive with the rest of the world. Which is true. Our conflict with China and Russia is quickly escalating, and somehow I don't think that they're prioritizing diversity over destroying the Western way of life. But Biden says otherwise.
We cannot let this decision be the last word. I want to emphasize, we cannot let this decision be the last word.
As allegedly Harvard University sent out an email stating they found a loophole in the SCOTUS decision, stating colleges and universities can consider the applicants' discussion on how race affected their life in their admission process. Which just goes to show, the people can pass whatever law, ruling, or decision they want. It simply won't mean anything if nobody will hold them accountable for failing to abide by those rules. And the only thing more ridiculous than the left's reaction to this ruling on the political and university level is the useful idiot level, as apparently a Redditor thinks that this ruling is the Supreme Court outlawing black people from attending university, which is both sad and hilarious. These literal liberal white saviors think that without the good graces of their lowered expectations of black people, they would never be able to get into a university based on merits alone. I would say that this is an outlandish thought for these people to have, but it is in line with who they vote for.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Now, to Reddit's credit, in their mega thread about the affirmative action ruling, a common comment was asking to ban legacy admissions, which, I agree, get rid of them where they still exist. But then Redditors go in on how they think that this will allow China to take over colleges in America, and compound that with their idea that liberals say there's too many blacks in jail, while conservatives think that there's too many blacks in college. Now notice how their solution never seems to be, if there's an under or overrepresentation somewhere, let's fix why this is happening. No, it's just always, let's just fix those numbers. They don't care about whatever issues are causing this, I just want to feel better about myself. Never mind the fact that they also seem to openly acknowledge a cutthroat meritocracy like China that severely punishes those who underperform will ultimately produce a class of students astronomically superior to what Western society is capable of. The irony of them both admitting that they see certain people as inferior and simultaneously admitting that the alternative to their way of life would produce superior results is such a hilarious self-own, but sadly, their shoe-sized IQs will never be able to combine the two. And the cell phones don't stop, as this topic was trending on Twitter today besides white women and Asians, where the New York Times wrote how this decision will all but ensure elite institutions will become whiter and more Asian and less black and Latino. And we hear about this a lot, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Because yes, there may be a statistical likelihood that this will happen, but fixing the result doesn't fix the problem. If these elite institutions just lower the standards and never address the issues, like why certain schools graduate kids that still don't know how to read, we still have a broken education system, except now it's broken at the top too. And Ben Shapiro has a point, where the left seems to be outraged that blacks might be affected by the ending of affirmative action, but seem to care less about Asians being affected by the existence of affirmative action. And that's what this always comes down to. They feign to care about fairness and equity, but the existence of Asians wrecks so much of their argument, they've actually created new phrasing to specifically exclude Asians from people of color. And I say all of this as an Asian, but with no horse in this race. I completely acknowledge that I was never going to be able to get into an Ivy League school. Growing up, of course my parents wanted me to get all A's, but when I was in school, I was only interested in girls that had D's. And ironically, just like the universities, I have since learned that it's better to give out equal opportunities. Where even the Babylon Bee chimes in, pointing out how awkward it is to rule against affirmative action when affirmative action is sitting right there in the room with them. And although they're a satire website, President Joe Biden was very clear in making his nomination for the next Supreme Court justice in the name of affirmative action. And the sad part is, whether it's Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, Vice President Kamala Harris, or Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, they may have been the best candidate for the job, because who knows how big the pool is of people that actually want to be remembered in history as part of the Biden administration. Because no matter what they do or don't do, their legitimacy will always be called into question because their boss cited affirmative action in filling those roles. I can only imagine if the Boston Celtics of the NBA came out and said, "We don't know who our next starting forward will be, but we do know he will be Asian." And obviously when I get announced as the next starter, every time I missed a shot or got dunked on, not only would it be a reason for fans to hate me as a worthless diversity hire with the dexterity of a newborn baby panda, but it would also be an indictment on Asians everywhere, as if they specifically needed an Asian for the role and I was the best one available. That's why I think that Kamala Harris is the ultimate insult, as Biden was specifically looking for an African American female, and the best the Democrats could muster up was a Jamaican Indian woman who they tried to rebrand as black. But it was like they only had Tyler Perry's Madea movies as reference. But I guess it's not saying much when the Democrat star player is this.
The Constitution says we hold these truths to be self, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator, that we fought a war over in 1860.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nicole,
much.
I appreciate
it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction.
So when discussing affirmative action, likely off cue cards, he confused the Declaration of Independence with the Constitution, inferred that the Civil War was in the 1960s, and then randomly walked off set mid-segment. I'd criticize him, but at this point, it's on brand.
It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq, losing the war at home.
Now, I could get scared at the idea that the commander-in-chief is claiming that Putin is losing the war in Iraq. But technically it's true because Putin does not have a single fighting unit left in Iraq. So Biden isn't necessarily wrong, he's just not necessarily conscious. So if you appreciate my concise, lighthearted commentary on what's really going on out there, hopefully I've earned your subscription that isn't just a racial quota for your feed, then go check out my video on the girl that realized that being woke was making her racist.